Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 216 of the Note Coach podcast. Welcoming back a returning guest, Linda Katz, Homecoming, the Deepening. I'm your host, Suzanne Culberg. And before we begin, Linda recently published a book called Homecoming. It's available on Amazon and probably many other places. If you can't find it, just type Linda Katz. And it's not cats as in meow. Cats.
K-A-T-Z.
Yes. I was going to say, or Z if you say it in the Aussie way. And this book, I have so many sections that are highlighted, so many moments of just joy and tears and shared reality. Even what I love about what you've written here, like we all have our own experiences. You don't need to have gone through the exact same thing to feel the underlying hurt or pain or loneliness or whatever. Like you speak about, eating from restrictive, whereas me, it's been eating from binging. So like the opposite, but it felt like a shared reality or different sides of the same coin. And how is it going? How is it writing this book? Like, I'm curious.
So the writing of it, it was one time where I actually, it's like we teach what we most need to learn. And this was one time where I actually did the thing that I often talk about, which is to wait for when the timing feels aligned, to trust that I don't need to push it ahead of time. Because I knew that I wanted to write a book for a few years. And I kind of had these like starts and stops, but it never felt like the right time. Like I could never really gain any traction. And there were two pieces that kind of pushed me to actually get started. The first was astrology. Somebody that I follow, Virginia Rosenberg, had said that the first few months of, I think I started it in January of 2022. And she had said that the first few months of 2022 was a great time to give the past a good death. And I thought, what's better than a memoir at giving the past a good death? So that seed was already planted in December. And then there was my birth story that as I started thinking about it, it made me laugh because basically I thought about it in contrast to my husband. So my husband, he was a first child. He was almost born on Laurel Canyon in LA because they couldn't even make it to the hospital, right? He was born within 30 minutes of getting to the hospital. And I was like, man, how excited his soul must have been to like start this human journey that he
was ready to go, literally born ready.
Yes, exactly. He was born ready. I had to be sucked into the world with like that vacuum forceps thing.
Ventouse. Yes.
Yes. And it was, a pontouse. Is that what it's called?
Ventouse. Makes me think like vacuum. Ventouse.
Yes. And so it, and I thought that is such a perfect metaphor that it was for me, that it was this sense of, I love life, but to grow down into being a human being has not always come easy to me, right? To come down into the realities of having a body, of having needs, of having desires, of just kind of the basics of humanity and what it means to be human. That hasn't always come easy. And it's actually been this journey of reclamation, which is really what I describe in Homecoming.
Yes. And there's a section in the book where you speak about the wintering, like personal winters. And sometimes, people can make a nest or a cocoon and not want to emerge, want to be in that winter. And, when you think about phases or, being birthed and you're literally being held in a womb, it's like some of us are like, I'm ready to go. And others are like, I don't want to leave this space.
Yes. And I was just writing about this the other day because the cocoon is needed, right? It's needed for transformation. And I think our culture in general does a very poor job of understanding the necessity of wintering, of having this cocoon where we can melt down some of our old ways of being, some old identities that no longer resonate for us, where we can come back to our bodies and to our soul dreams and these larger aspects of who we are. But it's equally true that if we overstay our welcome in the cocoon becomes a tomb.
Yes, literally. Because,
Yeah.
when you think about a baby, the vernix, all the stuff that's protecting them, the fluid, all starts to break down. It's too long. It's time to go. But the other thing that makes me think of is, our society's rejection or fear of wintering endings in any way, shape, or form. I was chatting to a client recently who is a new mother, and it was been my experience and many people, and this is the great unspoken, but when a new life comes into the world, like when we were just talking about that, when there is birth, there is also death, or at least the ending, because there's the you that was the maiden, there was the you that wasn't a mother, there was a you that didn't have somebody 24/7 needing your attention. Like if you just wanted to go for a walk or go to the shop or go see a movie, you just could. You didn't
Yes.
need to look after somebody or organize care or worry about anyone else's well-being. And she was like, but I should feel amazing and glorious. And, so many people want this and whatever. And I was like, but there is also a mourning for a part of your life that isn't available anymore. And it's not saying that, I think it's a thing too. It's not saying that you don't want your child or you don't love them or you don't care for them, but also there is a shift and a change that often doesn't get acknowledged or even seen because, you should be happy.
Yes. Yes. And I think it also that comes down to our two things: our discomfort with emotions like grief and any kind of quote unquote darker emotions, and two, that our ability to have mixed feelings. Like you were saying, in that time, it's like we have the joy of, of course I love my baby, and of course, there's the excitement for what's to come, and that it can live right snuggled up against the grief of what no longer is, the grief of the
Yes.
maidenhood, of who you were, like the grief of who you've been your whole life and no longer
Yes.
are.
You get to have both. And I think that's
Yes.
something that we don't acknowledge, that there isn't pure joy and pure sadness separated. It makes me think of that. Have you seen that movie Inside Out? With the
Yes.
emotions, and the second one's coming
Yeah.
soon, but like when she has the core memories all lined up, they're all the pure joy color, and then when sadness touches it and the blue starts to come around and Joy's like, what are you doing? Don't touch that. And it's like there is both, there's room for both. And the other thing you were saying about not being in touch with or able to express or even feel our emotions, I was out with my oldest child yesterday. We're at the shop, there was a kid having a pure tantrum, like banging fists on the ground, kicking, screaming, like, a pure tantrum. And there's the poor mother who's like, oh my goodness, I'm mortified. And there's people with their judgy stares or whatever. And I just said to her, I said, oh, to be able to express like that, like, where do we lose that? Because what happens when you do something like that, at least for me, if I have a pure moment of like adult tantrum, then I feel better and the rest of the day is great. But if you shove it down, ignore it, push it, put it in its box, it's always there, like just waiting. Not
Yes.
saying you
It's
should go and
wait.
chuck a tantrum in a supermarket, like, do not recommend. But, there can be places maybe you could go into the bathroom stall and kind of scream into a pillow
Yes.
or something.
Yes, exactly. Like to give yourself space to express that emotion, to rather than stuff it into our bodies, which eventually it's like our bodies start to grow sick because we're holding so much in.
Yes.
Yes.
Because emotion, you
Yes.
said it in the book as well, emotion, energy and motion, emotion is in the name. Whereas a lot of us have stagnant and still and stuck. And sometimes the things, the somewhat random physical symptoms that aren't connected to each thing, or you go to the doctor and part of you is relieved because nothing's wrong. Like,
Yeah.
the other part of you is like, well, my leg does hurt or my gut is cramped or whatever. But how often is it unexpressed stuff that chronically over time starts to show up physically?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So what I wanted to ask, Linda, is we called this one Homecoming, the deepening. What do you mean by like if you're looking at, I know, and you do talk a lot about this in the book, so I highly recommend everyone gets the book, but Homecoming is a journey. Tell us about the deepening phase.
So homecoming for me it's the heroine's journey. So it's kind of like a feminine counterpoint to the hero's journey, but it's not based upon our individual genders per se, right? It's the hero's journey, I feel like, is up and out, and the heroine's journey is down and in. And the deepening is really the first 2 seasons. So I imagine the heroine's journey as seasonal, because I love to borrow metaphors from nature, because I think it's just beautiful and it's the wild. There's such wisdom out there. And so the heroine's journey begins in autumn, and the deepening is the autumn piece and the winter piece. And this is really the time where we begin to shed and question some of our cultural conditioning. We might call it patriarchal conditioning. We begin to look at where might we have absorbed the values of the culture in ways that don't actually align with what we truly believe in or what truly matters to us, what we, based upon how we feel, what really matters to us. You know, for example, the kind, I call it the tyrant king culture, which is like the productivity at all costs. Like you're always doing, you're kind of in seasons of perpetual summer where you're always productive, you're always producing, you're always in service to other people, but there's never a slowing down, there's never a refilling of the cup. And during the deepening, the first part is recognizing where we have inherited those cultural beliefs and where they may be running us into the ground first and foremost, because I feel like oftentimes when we've been there, it's our bodies that break down, right? We get burnt out. We can no longer keep operating at the same clip that we have been. And then winter is the time where, you know, it's where the trees stand bare for a time. So rather than putting on this beautiful show of blossom or green leaves, they're very inviting, you know, they're just stark. And I think that that says something too, because during those winter seasons, we are more inward. We may not be spending as much time tending towards other people's feelings or experiences or managing their experience of us, especially if we've been trapped in the good girl, you know, like how we may have done in the past. And we're more curious with, okay, how can I resource myself? What are the aspects? What are the emotions that I haven't actually allowed myself to feel? And so the deepening really is, like we were saying, it's that cocoon. It's that the winter is, you know, the autumn is the little caterpillar is like, oh, I feel like it's time to become a butterfly. And then it crawls up into the tree. That's the autumn. And then the cocoon is the winter. And that's where I think that's where the real transformation happens. And that's why the winter season is definitely the longest in the book as well.
I love that. So I also use seasonal metaphors in my work. And I think what I love about it, and you spoke to it, you're like, you know, the tyrant king, patriarchal nature of nonstop productivity at all costs. I think you said perpetual summer, because to me, like endless summer gives me a nice kind of vibe, but perpetual summer, like we are going to produce at all costs kind of thing. Yes. And in that way of looking at things, life seems very linear. And then you see the graphs of before and after, and it's always going up. Like we're always on the up and up. And when life is linear instead of seasonal, when you stop, life's over. There's the beginning, there's the end. Yes. Whereas when you look at things in this way, cyclical, yes, there's a winter, but following winter, there is a spring. And for me, as soon as I start to really feel into this, like get beyond the programming and you've always got to be on. Yeah. If you set a goal, you want to release 10 kilos, you want to make $10,000, you want to write a book, you want whatever it is, and you usually give yourself a time frame, like, you know, by Christmas or in 6 months or whatever. If you get to the end of the time frame and you haven't reached it yet, a lot of us will push out the summer, like we'll go harder, we'll go stronger, we'll force and do more. Whereas when you look at this, it's like, okay, this season's complete. This summer is over. This, you know, it's time to harvest. And yes, I might not have dropped all 10 kilos or saved all $10,000 or written the entire book, but let's harvest what I have done and rest and then do another season. Because especially, you know, for those of us in business, this is the pattern I normally see. First time you launch something, it does really well. It's new, exciting to the audience. Oh my God, this is amazing. And then you have like second launch syndrome where it's like, it doesn't do so well. And because we've got this non-stop productivity increasing at all costs kind of capitalism nature, I'm a failure. I had 10 people this time. I was expecting 12 and I got 2. I suck at life. And it's like every circle, every container, every program is perfect. This season, I'm going to take this one through, and then the next one and the lessons I get and learn, because there'll be another, not like this is over. And I love how you literally start with the winter, because I imagine so many people, well, the autumn into the winter, they're exhausted, they're tired. Like as you said, they've been chasing the hero's journey, the traditional outer journey for so long that they've been avoiding the inner journey. And that's why, and it's funny, you know, in my programs, I say to people, a winter, like a personal winter can be 2 hours, 2 days, 2 years. Like we don't know how long it's going to be, but the more we resist and push off and ignore, often the longer it's going to need to be to recover from that.
Hands down. And I think that's such an important piece because, you know, the first time that we may go on one of these journeys, it's probably going to be longer and require more because we've been in that perpetual summer for a long time. And, you know, I've even noticed in my own life that this applies to the way that I structure my day. So for me, I start my day in winter. Like that's where I have to start slow. I have my coffee, I have my journal, like that's where I begin. And so it's also a way to notice like throughout our day, maybe someone else starts in spring and ends in winter at the end of their day, right? Like
that's me. I start with spring, I get up, I go for my walk, I get the kids' lunches ready, like everything is done. And then I go into the winter.
Yes. And so it's noticing, you can even see that arc on a day-to-day basis, and to get curious about like, oh, how does this, what feels best to me? And I think that part of the issue is that even on a day-to-day basis, too many of us don't allow ourselves the gift of winter at all.
Yes. And that's why we end up staying up late, watching TV, scrolling, eating, shopping, avoiding, because we, you know, this is my time. Is it really your time? Are you really enjoying that? Like if you do, you do you. But then what we do is we like, I'm going to spend all my money on planners and systems and things to stop me staying up so late or stop me eating. And it's like, the answer is to like allow pockets of time during the day. Like we're recording this, for me, it's quite early. I'll have to wrap this episode shortly. We've gone long, but after this, I'll have like a mini winter and then I'll start again. Like sometimes I have 4 seasons in a day twice. But, you know, it's like working out what works better for you and honoring that.
Yes. And I would say one of the ways that I've started thinking about winter also is like, it is a season of resourcing. It's a season of filling the well. It's the season of turning to ourselves and being like, okay, what would feel nourishing right now? Rather than, like you said, just being off to the races. And then it's like, run until the end of the day when we're completely zapped. We have not tended to our bodies. We have not tended to our emotions. And then we're just going to zone out entirely, right?
Yes,
it's like,
and that's still not tending either. That's still avoiding and shoving it in the box or the cage, the inner cage that I know you speak about, and you've been on previous episodes and we spoke about the inner cage.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Linda. Let people know where they can find you so they can, you know, find the book and more about what you do.
Yes. The best place is my website at singingbirdcoaching.com. You can also enter Homecoming the book into your URL, and it'll take me to that page on the website. And I'm right now through the end of the year, if you register for my newsletter, you also get a 30-page guide on the companion guide to Homecoming, which is basically, it'll help walk you through the heroine's journey to identify what season you might be in, to identify some seasonal practices for that time. So you can get that at homecomingthebook.com. And I'm on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there as well at Singing Bird Coaching.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you everyone for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.
Thank you.